Welcome to the Vintage Hollywood Archive. Olivia de Havilland, the doe-eyed actress beloved to millions as the sainted Melanie Wilkes of Gone with the Wind, but she was also a two-time Oscar winner and an off-screen fighter who challenged and unchained Hollywood's contract system. How Olivia de Havilland cracked the power of Hollywood studios. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you're new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive channel. Olivia de Havilland, Hollywood's queen of radiant calm, the last link to Hollywood's golden age. Hollywood's golden era is often seen as beginning with the rise of the studio system in the 1920s. This, in turn, spawned popular stars such as Clark Gable, Katharine Hepburn, Ingrid Bergman, Marlene Dietrich, Spencer Tracy, and Humphrey Bogart, as well as classic movies that ranged from epics such as Gone with the Wind to all-singing, all-dancing musicals like Singin' in the Rain. De Havilland remains the only A-list star from that era. She was the last major figure of a film tradition which touched the lives of millions, but which has now been superseded by very different forms of stardom and celebrity. She rebelled against the limitations of her roles, and in doing so, helped to break the system which had both made and confined her. From British background, born in Japan, having grown up and made a career in the United States and then settled in France, Olivia de Havilland was the most international of Hollywood stars. She also changed the face of Hollywood and its studios with her court victory against Jack Warner when she was barely 26 years old. Her win allowed actors who were suspended from employment while they fought during the Second World War to renegotiate their contracts. Her law allowed the obligations binding actors under contract to be relaxed. Her distinguished acting, her wonderful interviews, the risks she took in her career, as well as her choices in life. It takes up back of cinema, which becomes a little more distant every year, but which also grows stronger as time passes. During a career that spanned 6 decades, de Havilland also took on roles ranging from an unwed mother to a psychiatric inmate in The Snake Pit. The dark-haired de Havilland projected both a gentle, glowing warmth and a sense of resilience and mischief that made her uncommonly appealing. She was Errol Flynn's co-star in a series of dramas, westerns, and period pieces, most memorably as Maid Marian in The Adventures of Robin Hood. But de Havilland also was a prototype for an actress too beautiful for her own good, typecast in sweet and romantic roles while desiring greater challenges. Compared to her Gone with the Wind movie co-stars Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh, Olivia de Havilland, who played Melanie, was relatively prudish. In the Gone with the Wind book, Melanie was the sweet and innocent goody-goody girl. In real life, the same could pretty much be said of Olivia de Havilland. That doesn't mean she was entirely an angel. Lots of rumors swirled during her 8 movies with handsome sex symbol and leading man Errol Flynn over the years. Their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, but she always maintained that while the attraction was always there. From 1935 to 1941, these two superstars packed theaters with 8 flicks in which they co-starred, all but one of which still draw strong reviews. That should come as no surprise. With all the sparks that were flying between them off the set, it's easy to see why they were so convincing when they lit up the screen together. Warner Brothers didn't know what it was about to start when the studio started searching for a hit in the mid-1930s. It had heard that MGM had cast heartthrob Clark Gable for a production of Mutiny on the Bounty. Warner wanted to counter with Captain Blood, a story of an Irish doctor forced to become a pirate. Just one problem. Warner had mostly seedy gangster stars like James Cagney in its fold, not swashbuckling pirates. So the studio took a chance on an unknown named Errol Flynn, a Tasmanian native who, until then, had only played bit parts in B-movies. They paired him with de Havilland, a rising young starlet who had turned heads with her portrayal of Hermia in the 1935 version of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Almost overnight, it became a match made in Hollywood heaven. Critics said he blunted some of her harsh edges while she drew out his softness. But whatever the reason, audiences immediately went gaga over what might have turned into a financial bomb. For the next 6 years, the daring Flynn and the beautiful de Havilland made music and money in 7 follow-up films, whether the setting was Elizabethan England, the Old West, or 19th century Crimea. In the historical dramas, fact often came out on the short end, but who cares when you are watching these two heat up the screen? All the while, tongues wagged over their own private lives. Had de Havilland, who was just 19 when Captain Blood was released, given in to the wily charms of the dashing Flynn 7 years her senior? The betting was she had. The two were an item by the time Robin Hood began robbing from the rich. Just before his death in 1959, Flynn talked of his undying love for his early leading lady. Finally, in that rare 2009 interview, de Havilland told her side. "I didn't reject him," said de Havilland. "You know, I was also very attracted to him, but I said that nothing could happen while he was still with Lily." Flynn was married to Lily Demita, an actress 5 years his senior when he met de Havilland. She was away at the time, and he said that there was no longer anything much between them. I said that he had to resolve things with Lily first, but you know, he never did. I think he was in a deep thrall to her in some way. He did not leave her then, and he never approached me in that way again. So, nothing ever did happen between us. So, there was no love affair in private. Yes, we did fall in love, and I believe this was evident in the screen chemistry between us, but his circumstances at the time prevented the relationship from going further. Still, Olivia was seeing some of Hollywood's most desirable men, some married, some not, including the notorious womanizer Howard Hughes. By 1940, she had begun a 2-year relationship with actor Jimmy Stewart. Stewart and de Havilland shared many months together as a couple, at least one historic date when he accompanied her to the New York premiere of Gone with the Wind in 1939. The couple's budding romance filled gossip columns with rumors of imminent elopement until their relationship ended around the time of Stewart's enlistment in March 1941, 9 months before Pearl Harbor. 5 years later, having flown combat missions over Europe, the actor, who had previously won an Oscar for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, returned to Hollywood a seemingly changed man. A Princeton graduate, Stewart's choice for his first post-war role was as George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, a take on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Before production began, de Havilland was offered the part of Mary Bailey, but turned it down, as did other stars including Ginger Rogers, Jean Arthur, Lorraine Day, Martha Scott, and Anne Dvorak. Donna Reed ultimately accepted the role. Curiously, the film, which was rushed into theaters for Christmas 1946, failed at the box office before earning its place in film history. Nonetheless, Stewart's performance as George Bailey was recognized that year with an Oscar nomination, as was de Havilland for her role in To Each His Own. He lost, she won. In retrospect, I think Jimmy was a very complex man and revealed himself to very few people, she said. She wound up marrying author-screenwriter Marcus Goodrich in 1946 and divorced him 6 years later. A second marriage in 1955 would end in divorce as well. Her first child, Benjamin, would die of Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1991 at age 41. The only child from her second marriage, Giselle, survived. Hollywood's golden age produced an unforgettable galaxy of stars. None burnt brighter or longer than Dame Olivia de Havilland, yet she was admirably modest about her success. "One can't be on top all the time," she said. De Havilland was among the last of the top screen performers from the studio era, and the last surviving lead from Gone with the Wind. An irony, she once noted, since the fragile, self-sacrificing Wilkes was the only major character to die in the film. The 1939 epic, based on Margaret Mitchell's best-selling Civil War novel and winner of 10 Academy Awards, is often ranked as Hollywood's box office champion, although it is now widely condemned for its glorified portrait of slavery and antebellum life. 3 directors worked on the film. Stars Vivien Leigh and Clark Gable were far more connected on-screen than off, and the 4th featured performer, Leslie Howard, was openly indifferent to the role of Ashley Wilkes, Melanie's husband. But de Havilland remembered the movie as one of the happiest experiences I've ever had in my life. It was doing something I wanted to do, playing a character I loved and liked. When production on Gone with the Wind began in the late 1930s, Hollywood's top stars found themselves vying for the film's lead role of Scarlett O'Hara. But de Havilland was always set on portraying Melanie. As the actress told the New York Times in 2004, she viewed playing good girls as more challenging. "The general concept is that if you're good, you aren't interesting," de Havilland said, "and that concept annoys me, frankly." Cast as the demure foil to Vivien Leigh's spirited heroine, de Havilland lent intelligence and grace to her portrait of a woman with a shy, forgiving, almost too kindly nature. Stardom was a key feature in the development of Hollywood's studio system almost from its beginnings. As audiences requested new films from the unnamed performers on screen, the studios began to manufacture work which showcased a given actor's persona. A whole swathe of other personnel were then drafted in to create and maintain a star's appeal. This ranged across publicity stills, carefully managed public appearances, and regulation of what the media reported. Scandals could be covered up, though not entirely. The studios developed a cozy, mutually beneficial relationship with the mainstream press, whereby limited access to the stars was given in exchange for positive coverage. The reciprocal arrangement promoted movies and sold newspapers, but it also required the press to look the other way when stars transgressed, as in the case of Olivia de Havilland, who attracted the attention of the authorities on more than one occasion. But if the star system brought success, it could also stifle actors. To play the part of Melanie, de Havilland had to ask the Warner Bros. Production company, with which she had a 7-year contract, to loan her to producer David O. Selznick's rival studio. The actress pleaded with Ann Warner, wife of Warner Bros. Head Jack Warner, to intervene on her behalf. Eventually, the studio boss relented. This wasn't the last time de Havilland came up against Hollywood's studio system, which found 5 massive, male-led production companies dominating the film industry at Star's expense. In fact, the actress soon proved instrumental in dismantling the exploitative framework entirely. De Havilland was unhappy with the roles offered to them and begrudged their lack of self-determination. The latter was maintained by the studios through lengthy, restrictive contracts that could last 7 years, and which allowed actors to be pressured into remaining within the career boundaries which had been set for them. While under contract with Warner Bros., de Havilland was often cast as a damsel in distress. Seeking more challenging roles, she started turning down parts she didn't want, resulting in suspensions of her contract. Though de Havilland planned to move on when the agreement expired, Warner Bros. Tacked on the 6 months she'd spent under suspension to her already years-long contract. In response, the actress filed a lawsuit under an obscure anti-peonage measure that forbade California employers from enforcing a personal services contract for more than 7 years. "There really wasn't any doubt about the right decision for me to take," de Havilland later recalled. "One of the nice things I thought was, if I do win, other actors feeling frustration such as I feel will not have to endure that. They'll take the suspension without pay, of course, but knowing they will not have to serve that time again." De Havilland went without work for the duration of the lawsuit, but ultimately, the situation worked out in her favor. In 1945, the California Supreme Court upheld a lower court ruling that the law meant 7 calendar years, not 7 years of working time, paving the way for other stars to follow what became known as the De Havilland Rule. The actress put her own career on the line in order to help others, an act that takes so much courage. De Havilland showed remarkable courage in refusing the roles offered to her by Warner Brothers. Her victory on appeal in 1944 was a landmark case in the history of American film stardom and the first crack in the studio's hold over their most important commercial assets. However, there has been a price to pay. Free to enjoy a wider range of roles, contemporary stars can appear more real to audiences, and therefore prone to more everyday failings than their predecessors. The press can no longer be bribed with access and feel empowered to expose every embarrassing lapse to the vast global audience which can find their private lives at the click of a mouse button. While the Hollywood star system ruled over the lives of performers like De Havilland, who have lived to see decades of change in the film industry, it also preserved them in a halo of untouchable glamour. We may not see their like again. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new here.